Hello, my name is Alexander Morari, and I'm the founder of ITKeyMedia. You've tuned in to our podcast about Central and Eastern European startups that are in pre-Series A stage. And today's guest is Mateusz Pniewski, the co-founder of TransactionLink, a one-stop shop to build any data-driven FinTech product. Cześć, Mateusz.
Hi, cześć. Very nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Let's allow time to prove this. To start off, why do you think APIs are the future of FinTech innovation, as so many people agree now? Like, why is that so?
I think it's mostly driven by the fact that everyone wants a bit of share of the financial world. And I think it's that simple. So, the data, the payment stack, everything about FinTech is really in containers and like really isolated from the external world. And truth be told, it's not this case. It's not really the case because, people in the financial systems are intrinsically bad or like nothing like that. It's more like, there's loads of regulations. There's a lot of dedicated software that has been out there for ages that basically resulted in financial institutions being really closed and locked environments. And, as internet has proven that you, as a developer, as a tech company, you can basically, make everything 10 times bigger, 100 times bigger, just through like clever engineering or clever software development. It is natural that people are looking at unbundling the world of finance and taking a bit of that for themselves, because it's arguably that's a pretty sizable amount of global GDP is in the financial services. So why wouldn't you want to use that and take some of that into your business? And the first question that anyone familiar and happy with this side of matters will say, right, so like, how can we actually get access to what is out there already, and how can we make use of that so that we can transform it into something new, something better? And the natural first answer to this is, okay, well, data and payments and tech is the kind of bloodstream of all that happening, but you need to be able to access it somehow. And the simplest and actually the most familiar way of accessing something from a server or a system from the outside is basically through an API. So there's a natural tendency for companies that build something new to expose APIs for them also to allow external parties to develop faster, but it's also the push towards the existing financial companies to expose more and more through APIs so that we can get access to it, so that we can build new value on top of that. So obviously it's a bit of an unfair battle, because banks don't always see the value in exposing APIs, but that is changing dramatically as well. But it's a matter of time before it happens. But I think the simple answer to your question is, like, the data needs to be and payments and money needs to be unleashed somehow, and the technical term for unleashing it and making it available to my system is an API. It's a bridge from the old to the new, in a sense, right?
Plus, there's also external pressure on banks who now must open up and create their own APIs, or create like these avenues to tap on the data that they have in their conservative, traditional kind of framework environment, and open this up, making it easier for the FinTech startups to basically tap on it and then create their own programs on top, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the case. So, PSD2 is probably, or open banking, depends where you are. If you are in the UK, you probably will be more familiar with the open banking term. But generally, we're talking about the same thing, which is the PSD2 regulation that basically told banks that, hey guys, you are sitting on heaps of data. And by the way, this data doesn't really belong to you. It belongs to the consumer, him or herself. Yeah. So you should really be in the position to expose it somehow. And people have been, like, there are companies that have been doing that for the past decade or more. Even Tink started as a company that was accessing your data not through the kind of standard open banking route, but through other alternative methods. So they were using private APIs, all this kind of business, but all in the spirit of I, as a consumer, I'm keeping my data and keeping my money in the banks for its safekeeping, but it's actually mine, and I really want to do something else with it if I just please. And that's the basic premise. But yes, PSD2 is this kind of, I would say it's even a bit of a philosophy, because that give power back to the people, and let the people decide to what they want to do with their financial lives. And it's obviously banks might not like it immediately, but I think further down the line they will really see the benefits.
I wonder what do you think made regulators side with the populous, as you say, like with every Kowalski and Joneses out there. Why was that so?
So, I mean, I have two theories. The first one is that, like if you want to get into the banking space these days, it's like the market is so homogeneous and it's so hard to access that is just unhealthy for the system itself. And as a result, the system really starts to hold a bit too much power, right? Like obviously, I don't want to be talking about all the negative things about what banks do, because I don't know, except for what the media will tell me. But it does make sense that institutions that hold majority of the money in a country have a say in the politics of the country or in decisions of the country, and that's just by definition that shouldn't really be the case, right? Like back in in Renaissance and in the Enlightenment, we kind of started to separate church from the country, and now we are getting in the situation where again private institutions are kind of adhering to the political system so closely that that we have this weird situation where incentives might not necessarily be aligned. So I think I think the beauty of European Union is that it's kind of not representing one country, but the good of all. Obviously, it has its problems, and not everything they do is perfect, but like that's the case. That's why I really like this philosophy that PSD2 is essentially giving us, because it just thinks in terms of, right, let's just stir things up. Let the best win, not the richest or the most powerful, right? And best, it means best technology, the most clever business model. And again, like if Europe wants to be competitive, like we're not going to be competitive across the entirety of the globe with the old banks and their legacy, because they have more to lose than to gain in the short term. Whereas, we only can compete with the world when we come up with something new. And there needs to be a regulatory and technical environment for that to thrive. So that's the first theory. But then the second theory is that, a lot of the payments ecosystem, and let's be honest, PSD2, the P stands for payments. So it's not necessarily, the directive is not necessarily directed at banks, right? Banks are just a necessary part of that equation. But, the essence of PSD2 is in the payment service directive, right? And I think there's a fair amount of to be said about the fact that because European regulations are a bit stricter than what you might see in America or in Asia, we sometimes lose on the time to market front. And we end up using a lot of American solutions in the fintech world, right? Obviously, we have more and more. And actually, as a matter of fact, probably the majority of the fintechs you would be using by now could be European. But like as a perspective, when you look at your legacy systems, your card is issued by an American corporation, one of the two essentially, right? A lot of the banks will be supported by external American capital. Again, there's nothing wrong with this. Like there should be 100% freedom of market. But I think what PSD2 is trying to address is that in America, you can build a financial business super, super fast. And technology is the blocker, really. Whereas in Europe, it's always the regulation that is the blocker. And I think the clever people at the European Central Bank realized that and actually found the tools to change that. And so that's that's brilliant.
In a nutshell, to reword this phrase from the crisis time when American banks were too big to fail, you could say that in Europe they understood that those banking organizations and banking system is too powerful not to fail, or let's say too powerful not to open up. Mateusz, thanks. Let's move on to this scenario now as a warm up. That was like too heated discussion, let's say, and this could take us ages. Round one, solution and the program. In a nutshell, like what you are building, and then we'll switch on to the dashboard. I understand that there's a demo that you have in store for us. So what you are building and how do you fit the company and the product that you are building into the environment and the setting that we just have shown?
Yeah. So a few words of the background story of how TransactionLink came to be what it is and what it might be in the future. We started as an AISP provider ourselves, so very much what you are, very familiar with, the true layer, the Plaza of this world. But we very quickly realized that the real value added is not necessarily just in the infrastructure layer, but actually in the provision of the entire spectrum to the solution, to the problem the customer is having. So, access to data from your bank account is a part of a bigger process. Let's say the know your customer process or know your business process. And where we started to look for value is by actually letting the customer solve their KYC problem, their KYB problem, their credit scoring problem, or embedding your fintech problem, not just the one cog in this big wheel, in this big engine that we could call a fintech, right? So that's why, like, my strong kind of appreciation of the PSD2 philosophy, because this is actually where we emerged from, and I love it because PSD2 actually allowed us to think about a new way of how our product could solve new set of problems for the customer. So what we're doing, you're very right in saying that we're trying to be a one-stop shop to build your next fintech project or to take your existing fintech to a new level. And what this essentially means is, like, I really like to think about it a bit like WordPress for fintech. So when you're building a new website, and if you want to test things out, you don't know if the market is there, if you don't know if the customer segment is the one you really are thinking about. So you really want to build something quickly, check it, not get stuck in regulations. You don't want to get stuck in, like, oh, is this provider the right one, or that provider the right one, or sign contracts for like 3 months on a provider that you don't even know you want. So where we are bridging the gap of time to market when you're building fintech. And again, just like WordPress, we give you all the tooling that you need on a plug and play basis. So if you want to have access to, a Polish, UK, French credit bureaus, because that's what your business requires, off you go. All the connections are done. You can just access them through our API. If you're looking for an AISP provider that is working, I don't know, in Ukraine and in Spain, or does this one obscure thing that nobody else does, again, it's under our API. We onboard all those providers for you to just, like, have I want to use this, I want to use that, I want to use this, go, it's live. So that's why I like to think about it as WordPress, because WordPress really, you can put your blog or website online in an evening, and that's the kind of vision we have ultimately somewhere down the line to like launch a simple fintech, in the evening, right? Something like this.
And moreover, if you take in mind this comparison to WordPress for fintech, basically you can start a very simple landing page or just one app or one addition, and then you can grow up as your business grows and your clients need more and more. Interesting.
Exactly. So
yes.
Yeah. So just to wrap it up, definitely the case is here for if your fintech already exists and you want to take it global, we are the place to go. You don't need to understand local regulations. You don't need to understand local requirements. We got you covered. But also, if you have a big fintech that is, let's say, a bit offline, and COVID has really shown you that online is the way to go, we're also there to kind of supercharge your operations through our one-stop shop. So it's not only for, like, starting from the ground up, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and before diving into the dashboard itself, so as far as the industries and the verticals that you keep in mind, or let's say functions or goals. So you mentioned tenant screening, car sharing, AML, and anti-money laundering, banking, lending, and I believe this is not the exhaustive list, of course. Then what about tenant screening as such? Tenant screening, by the way, is it B2B or BTC contexts? Which, I mean, residential or office, for instance, or shopping center, screening? So
we as TransactionLink always support other businesses. So that's, we always are in the B2B setup. And the customers in the tenant screening segment are actually various, mostly B2C, to be honest, because I think this segment is really getting a lot of traction on the continent, pretty well known in the UK, but actually getting more and more popular on the continent. The use case is very simple, right? Like, if you, instead of taking a huge amount of cash up front for renting out the property, I might not have, right? Or it's very often the case that you ask your family like, hey, can you give me some money? Yeah. So these guys are basically solving this problem by saying, right, you don't need to put cash up front. We can verify you like much deeper. Essentially, almost the way a lending company could verify you in the process without actually moving the funds, right? So it's basically a lending company, but without actually releasing the money at the end of the process. So, this is very exciting. Like that, this is exactly what we exist for. So that, there are people who come out from the outside, they see, oh, lending value proposition, but actually, if you take this bit and that bit and you like swap them around, you have a tenant screening solution. If you take that bit and that bit, oh, actually, I can launch my, mobility startup now because I have the KYC bit and debt collection bit done. So I'm good. And yeah, so these are, just speaking about tenant screening, that's just one of the segments we're trying to support.
Yeah, as a sample, because in other words, tenant screening, I mean, deposits from tenants are mostly play the role of risk mitigation rather than getting some money for some playing on short-term bank deposits.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like what? It's like 2,000 euros that they take from you. They're not going to make money of it. It's more like if something goes wrong, they have the buffer of like canceling the contract with you, but keeping the cash to cover the. So, but like, you don't need to do that, right? You can just.
And the process is more liquid. KYC. Yeah. More fluid, smooth, and liquid, meaning shorter from what, signing like tenant agreements or sending out tenant agreements to actually having a new tenant. Look, let's now dive into the app itself, and you take over. Let's have a look.
Excellent, thank you. So here you can see a very simple demo that we are experimenting with. So this feature is not live, so there's a bit of a sneak peek for you as to what experience we're trying to offer to customers and innovators all around the world. Essentially, this is what we call a playground. So a place where you can customize the way the interface of your app or your kind of the fintech part of your business is going to look like. And like I said, we very much think about it in terms of WordPress. So WordPress has its plugins. We call them apps in our world. So as a first step, you're able to pick an app. Currently, we support over 40 apps. But like I said, it's an experimental feature that we're testing here in the playground. So we put 3 for you to be able to see, what kind of animal this really is. So we put the IASP value proposition that is our own in-house piece of software. We have coverage in Poland, so if you want to play around with this, you can launch that app. But if you can also add verif, so video verification into your flow. I don't know if you're a crypto exchange, you probably will be looking for something like this. And here again in the middle, you can already see live what the experience is going to look like. My screen might be a bit small to show it really well, but you get like it changes in real time what this front end for the customer is going to look like. So this is just a template of what this looks like. You can obviously play around, and we are a white label solution by design. But again, now like as I click and I move to the next step, I basically implemented my AISP interface and I'm connected to it and I can start making calls. Equally here, I already implemented verif with no hustle, no nothing, no contracts, no book a demo, It's here, it's live, and I can start querying and I can start making calls and I can start actually, running the video. But let's say this is my, this is the app I want to, show you, and obviously this is the real. Like this actually works in here, so you can go through the entire process as well, because it's a pretty standard AISP flow where you can pick the bank, you log into it. Wait, so let's see if this is the if this is sandbox or production. Yeah. So again, this is just a mock of what the flow looks like, but yeah, new data available. Use REST API to get it, right? Like it's there. It's already done. You basically just saw this is the entire AISP value proposition, right? You just saw it in the playground. And once this is done, I can start playing around with what I actually downloaded from those methods. So obviously these apps have their interface, but at the end of the day, you're trying to get some data about your customer in let's say a KYC process. So you can you can start getting information that you just downloaded and literally make a call here and see what it looks like, right? And this is the data that you downloaded from the sandbox. And so does the front end, right? So like the fintech has its front end when it comes to, you need to expose some fields to the customer. The customer needs to click through it, give the data, there needs to be some AML checks, But there are also apps that only have the backend functionality, right? So I just showed you the front end where you can actually see what's happening and what the customer would see. Like I said, you can customize it, but you don't need to. If you want to be really, really fast to market, you can basically take it the way we pre-programmed it for you. But in the backend, obviously, there is nothing the user can see, right? These things, after user approval or after some logic you write, they basically launch in the background. So in the backend section of this playground, you can start querying some data sources. So Data Ninja is, for example, an app that takes the raw AISP data that users pull from the bank and labels it and does profiling on it. Again, obviously you can dive into how this works. We give you all the instructions on how this works, but you don't need to like go through these lengthy processes of modeling data on both sides so that they understand. It just works out of the box. And there are 27 categories that you can play around with. Here is an example of a Polish data source where you can query all the national court registry numbers. So if you're doing some KYB, you want to know, like someone's just going to put their name in, but then with this data source, we allow you to populate the rest of your database with numbers, the VAT numbers and all this kind of stuff. So this happens in the background again, but as a fintech, you probably will want to have access to these data. Same here, VAT whitelist. Is this person paying taxes? You want to check that in your process for KYC, KYB, and exactly just the way it was in the last bit. Let's say Data Ninja, whatever. You can see in real time how you make those calls and what response they. Oh, I need to put the account ID, so I can't do it now. Basically, you can see how this works now, and we want you to be able to configure and see what your ultimate app is going to look like in 15 minutes. When we put all the apps in, all the front-end apps from the backend, all the backend apps, we want to let you build your fintech in an hour, program your logic super quickly as well. So if one thing fails, then show me the other thing. So that's the real value proposition we actually are adding as well, that users can play around with these apps from our marketplace literally the way they want. And just to give, for those in the audience who don't really know what we do in a kind of more global, from a more global point of view, then we are allowing everyone to access those apps through an app store where you can learn everything about those apps and again connect them immediately. And the playground is just a place for you where you actually start kind of configuring these things. So this is a tool basically aimed at CTOs, developers, maybe product people. We will be making it a bit more business people friendly, let's call it this way. But for now, this is our main audience for us, is technical people who want to implement things fast and in a reliable way. So that's why it looks the way it does.
Yeah, before we wrap up on this demo, could you please go to the next page, Verif TransactionLink, meaning the list? Yeah, over here.
Yes.
And then App Store. So here you have 11 live, I understand, apps.
So so the 11 apps are basically the ones we made pages for. So to be very honest with you, we are a startup ourselves, so we code things and then make a bit of marketing about it. So like I said, we have 44 data sources today, but there's a bit of a delay.
Yeah, of course. I mean, anyways, it takes some leap of imagination, but the direction at least is well set up. And so I can see now a NetOwn company, right? NetOwn. So that's a company I know. And basically how their app appeared here, you went to them, recruited them, so to say, or they come to you? Like what's the procedure here? How did you get NetOwn to be present in the app store?
So NetOwn is great. There's a bunch of great guys because they were one of our first apps. So we approached them saying, hey, we're building this. Do you want to be on the marketplace? Because we really think customers will love your product. And they agreed. So, they were like, great, just build something. So these guys are amazing. We know them obviously because it's a local, a Polish company. So we probably live, a district or two away from each other. That's how it started.
Mm-hmm.
But I approached them personally, and onboarded them. We onboarded them manually, but then now we can see, even though we are early stage, we can see a bigger and bigger pool from various kinds of providers who actually say, "Hey, can I be on the TransactionLink marketplace?" Because that's a very interesting opportunity to be resold. Let's be honest, but also we are widening the scope of use cases that these tools can be used in, right? By making it extremely easy to connect, I don't know, our AISP with scoring and Verif or whatever, you can come up with something new super quickly, as opposed to be focusing on, how long is it going to take to implement this one provider? Is this provider the best provider? Let's sign a contract. 3 months later, you forgot your initial idea, right? And here we'll, by taking that away, we really want to let developers, innovators, startups, but also bigger companies that are looking for something interesting and new, to just take the hustle of integrating away and just think about okay, what could I actually build that will bring value?
Mateusz, what a clever idea, when in the moment when somebody might think that marketplaces are parts of the past and there's no marketplace to be created, you build something in a very new kind of environment, a new tech space. And I think that's a brilliant idea to manage to put a marketplace for something like that. So are you planning to add apps made by yourselves, or already focusing on third-party providers?
So I think our approach as of today is to rely on external providers, and I think the main reason is that there's loads of very clever companies out there that do amazing things. So there's obviously there's a bunch of undisclosed partners we are working with who are amazing at what they do, and it's just a very cold calculation that we would never be able to do that, or if we were, why would we compete with those guys? We are in a much better situation where we partner up with them and say, guys, you're doing a brilliant piece of software. Let's sell it to a bigger group of customers. Let's sell it to a bigger bunch of use cases, and let's work it out together, rather than compete on margins that are getting lower and lower in basically the entirety of the financial sector, right? So that's our approach today. But obviously, as a marketplace, as a strategy, and I think that's that's very well known from Amazon, Zalando's, and all the other marketplaces of this world. If we see a gaping hole where we see our customers are we need this, and we can't find anyone who's doing it at a decent level, we probably will be building something in that void, because that's also the beauty of the marketplace. We can see what various types of customers do, and as a result, we know what they're lacking as well and how big that opportunity is. So we could build something in-house, or maybe do something like a call for startups, where we say, there is this gaping hole, guys, build something here and you will make an estimate of X amount of money. But again, I'm not excluding this option, but our strategy today is to rely on brilliant providers that are out there, in the entirety of Europe, just to give us their to help us, to give us their software.
And for those providers of apps, you are, for now, just another channel of distribution, so to say, or go-to-market kind of frames or gateways, right? Until you are strong enough where you will be able to dictate them conditions, right?
I wouldn't put it this way, that we were going to be in a position to dictate something. Obviously, we will be able to shape the kind of go-to behavior of suppliers at some point, but I wouldn't call it, that we will. I think our business is not necessarily in driving, price by 1% here or there. It's really much more about, there is loads of companies that don't even know how to use FinTech yet, and let's put 10 APIs together and tell them, hey, you can start lending money. You can start rating out your space, and here's the tenant screening solution that can help you out, right? I think this, rather than I don't think our marketplace is aimed at we do understand that without our suppliers, this business doesn't exist. So we really are not in the position to be forcing them to do something against their business needs.
Yeah, of course. I was sure that this is the approach. I just wanted to let you underline this, basically, by stressing
Yes. Thank you.
again the sustainability of the philosophy on your side. I mean, the
Yes.
sustainability philosophy of the relationship with your providers, of course. Let's move on to next round, Mateusz. Competitors. In a nutshell, are there any competitors you are looking up to, or you think you might learn from?
Well, so I don't think there is a lot of companies that follow the same model we do. There are companies out there that are focusing on the data orchestration layer. So in the same space or in an adjacent space. I think my favorite example is Primer.io. So these guys took the payments ecosystem and e-commerce and took that to the next level when it comes to orchestration. Essentially, we move in a similar space where they're not building the rails to make payments because there's loads of them already. The problem that customers have is how do you arrange these things that it fits your geographic coverage, how how your fraud that flows through the system. And so when it comes to the model itself of let's orchestrate, let's take suppliers and kind of build a new set of value propositions streamlined for the customer with them, I think this model is getting much more and more popular, and it's getting a lot of traction with investors as well. But when it comes to direct competitors, we basically compete with softwares that, especially dedicated softwares that let you connect to many different data sources and have this data in-house, to have this, to have you download this data very easily. And this very often is a very big piece of software that companies paid loads of money for. I don't know, so the Blue Medias of this world will definitely have a set of tools where you can download any sort of data you want. But I think our value proposition is really about making it extremely accessible, especially to developers. And yeah, so I mean, again, I don't think at this stage there is anything that would stop a company doing something similar to what we're doing. There's not we don't have we don't have an underlying IP or a patent or anything like this. We are racing against time to build a network effect here, just like Facebook did, just like Amazon did. And so this is the value purpose, this is the kind of defensibility we're looking after. And I don't think many companies are following that model in our space just yet.
Grow fast, breaking fewer and fewer things, you could say.
Well, more and more things.
More and more on the other side.
Well, yes. The more you break, the more you learn, right?
Mateusz, thanks. Let's move on to next round 3, quick Q&A. What are your own productivity hacks, not the tools, the hacks in the way of doing things?
Put all your meetings in the morning because you are fresh, but you are not productive fresh. So when I put intense focus work in the morning, I never do anything. I basically procrastinate because I'm sleepy, but actually meetings and talking to people where you have no choice but actually to have energy and keep the conversation going. If you block your calendar with 3 meetings in the morning from, let's say, 9 a.m. till midday, you actually feel really pumped. Then top this up with a coffee and you're good to go for the rest of the day. If meetings at the end of the day are always problematic because things have lags, and they always overrun, and then the last event in the day is always suffering because the last event is taking the sum of all the lags of all the events. So you really want to have all your meetings in the morning to keep the blood running and also to not ruin the rest of the day. And I think that's the one that I'm using mostly.
Okay. Let's expand a little bit. So as far as meetings, do you have any kind of a constitution, not longer than half an hour, or you do not start a meeting before you get an agenda confirmed? We have specific topics to go through. Anything on the meeting side as well?
So it's never is longer than an hour, but I'm trying to find a mix of the American and Scandinavian approach that I learned from my colleagues in Germany. So Americans will love to give you a 10-minute meeting, boom, let's talk about the things we need to go and let's move on, Whereas Scandinavians say, let's make it a 3-hour long meeting. Why? Because I don't want to talk about this after this meeting. So we deal with everything related to the matter we need to talk to in this time slot and not a minute after it. So let's dedicate 3 hours.
Wow.
And everyone sits down and discusses it. Now is your opportunity, right? So that also dictates that you really need to prepare for that meeting, because you will not have a chance to ask questions after that. But as a result, the meetings are super long. You get food, you have a chat about stuff, but no more questions about this topic after that. So I'm trying to find a good balance. So like, I'm always trying to dedicate an hour to something, even if it's a bit too long, because the noise, the things that you didn't talk about in the meeting that they generate afterwards is so annoying. You have to like multitask all the time. Everyone said like, oh, but when you're talking to, when you went this customer, did you actually mean that they were using this data source or that data source? And you were like, you just ruined my thought stack, like my mental stack in my head on a different topic for me to answer. No, I meant Experian, right? Or something like this. So, again, an hour I think is a good time. But I'm not a big fan of like 10, 15-minute meetings, because it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, okay, let's move on. As far as the tools, what's most helpful for running the company? Tools.
Superhuman. Superhuman is this.
What's that?
Is this email service where basically it brings the objective of Superhuman is to bring you down to 0 emails on in your inbox. Okay. So the moment you have 0, you are happy, and they give you a beautiful picture because you've reached your nirvana and you're great and you're fine for today. No more things occupying your mind. And I think the premise of these guys is very interesting, that inbox is the central part of my work, like it's the central part of my communication, but also is the central part of noise and disturbance that happens during the day. So the moment you clear it all up is actually when you can start thinking about the business. Okay. Am I talking to the right customers? Et cetera, et cetera. Because now today, when I'm talking to you and I already can see that my Superhuman is telling me I've got 15 emails that I need to deal with. And if I don't do that, it's going to keep telling me, deal with them, because you will not be able to think about your business. You'll be just answering emails.
Look, I opened up their website, superhuman.com, and a couple of endorsements they have. One is from head of brand at Notion, but let's take this one. CEO of Crunchbase says, yeah. Superhuman is the fastest email app I've ever seen. It's about time. I mean, what else do you need to know as a co-founder? Interesting.
Yeah, so basically, the beauty of it is that the Superhuman forces you to make a decision about an email. Like, I'm going to answer it now? Answer it. If you don't have the time to answer it, you have a tool to say, I'm not going to answer it now, but it asks you when. But okay. It takes it away from your attention, and it brings it back when you said you will be ready for it. And that's super helpful, because you might have a meeting that is going to discuss this in like 2 days' time. So you say, hold it for 3 days, and then it disappears, right? And comes back to you in 3 days.
Interesting. So it's like an external coach, basically. I mean, in a sports sense, an external coach that says you need to run 1 extra mile and then relax. This is something you don't need to do now. Focus on other exercise and so on. Interesting. Definitely.
Or a private assistant, yeah.
Or a private assistant, but pushy one.
Yeah, but
I need a decision now about this.
Yeah, exactly.
Or we forget it and shelf it until next week or something. Exactly. Okay, cool. Mateusz, let's move on. Round 4, the company. So the company is not even a 1 year old, we could say, right? Yes. Founded on the turn of 2020, 2021. And there are 2 co-founders, Mateusz Pniewski, yourself, and your friend and colleague, definitely co-founder, Marek Lewandowski. You might not mention this, but I wouldn't allow you to be too honest. As a graduate of the University of Cambridge, and you worked with N26 and Rocket Internet. Tell me what you got from those 2 companies, N26 and Rocket Internet, what you brought from those companies into TransactionLink, like most important stuff, other than the brands, of course.
Okay, Rocket Internet, definitely focus on where the money is and do it today and now. As in, I think at Rocket, I really learned that a lot of people are interested in your value proposition. A lot of people say yes, I love it, maybe, but then that's not enough. Like you need to have proof now today for you to reduce your learning cycles and have them have them super fast. And like Rocket Internet was amazing at testing thesis at very, very high speed, which made them extremely successful because, thesis number 179 was the right one. You got product market fit, off you go. It's just a matter of money now. And some operations, but it's easier to throw money at a problem than going in circles and not knowing what you're doing, right?
Okay.
So Rocket was definitely all about test your hypothesis really fast. As a matter of fact, if you I don't know if it's still there, but if you go to Rocket Tower in Berlin, there was like on my floor there was this huge Rocket Internet launch plan hang up on the wall. Because it's a process. Like you need to do this, you need to have a SEO sign off, you need to have the tech ready, you need to have the Q&A, you need to launch your first ad. And, they had this process of like 3 months. You have to launch your company, and this can only be done if your operations are like at a top level and you're executing super fast. N26 was mostly about, I think. Obviously, N26 was an amazing experience, amazing bunch of people. But I think what I took most from there is how they built the culture and how people, why people loved working there. And so, basically at TransactionLink, I have a one-to-one copy of the calendar we had at N26. So, we have our plannings in the morning. They're set in the similar way. Then I have a meeting with my founder, what we're going to do. We have monthly product reviews, legal reviews. We have company retros every Friday where everyone says what they've been doing, but not like an agenda, more like what have we achieved this week. We have a lunch together on Wednesdays. That is, it was called brown bag lunch at N26, where people would say what they're doing, but at the same time everyone's getting food and chatting. So I took a lot of these things when it comes to building culture and the startup environment from N26, and I'm actually really happy that people love it.
Cool. So Mateusz, Marek as co-founders, how many people you have in the team right now?
So Marek is my co-founder and CTO. We have 15 people in total, including the 2 of us.
Okay, and what's the labor division in this 13 people?
8 developers, and the remainder is, well, not just business, but also admin, compliance, and stuff like this, right? So, but we started off much more as a product and tech company than business. Obviously, that was the kind of stage, right? Like early stage needs to build the product first and then think about how you're going to sell it. I mean, not then think about how to sell it. Don't get me wrong, because my investors would kill me if they hear it. But on the roadmap of a company, you have to build something first, something very simple, and then go to your customers and offer it, right? So that's the kind of also reflected in the organization structure.
Yeah, of course. So look, in the wake of the recent funding, by the way, are you recruiting right now? If yes, for what roles, and what's the most difficult type of people?
I think the meta comment is that we're always looking for great people. Like if you're doing, tech, if you're doing product, if you're doing compliance, if you're a great intern who wants to really get involved in the fintech space, because I think the next decade is going to be all about fintech, nothing more. Then we're always here to kind of, and we're going to give you a competitive salary. We're going to give you a competitive environment. But I think obviously we're looking for more developers. Who isn't? We're looking for product people, so people who can really have a deep dive into the space and say, right, this is the value proposition we can sell to the customers. Let's build it quickly. Let's form an MVP. Off you go. We're looking for business development people, so people who will be able to talk more to the customer, get more of their feedback, and actually implement things. But like I said, so these are the kind of 3 areas we really need people. We are actively looking for brilliant candidates, but we're always open to welcome anyone who is just amazing and who wants to grow or is planning to be an A+ player. Not doesn't have to necessarily be an A+ player already, but has the ambition to be one.
Okay, office-based, remote, combination, hybrid. What's the approach there?
Yeah, so we have an office in Warsaw. This is where our tech team is residing, and we plan to keep it this way. We are also opening a Berlin office very, very shortly to have access to the talent pool there as well, but also to the clients there. We actually prefer an office setup, not remote, and there's very good reason for it. I don't know if we have time to go through this, but I just personally think that if I'm not really counting on getting people as they are, but I really believe in their development. So I'm not expecting to have a person that fits exactly what I need today. I'm expecting to have a person that is a very fertile soil to learn on the job. And this is only possible if this person is around, if this person listens to me, it listens to the CTO, but also listens to what the interns are talking about. You have to be in the loop to learn fast. And I have loads of colleagues who are brilliant, but because of remote, they are just frozen, right? They didn't really progress. They're brilliant, right? They're kind of top players, but I think the rate at which they're developing and then the rate at which they are, getting experience from all the people around them is just much, much slower. And I don't want to do this to my employees. I don't want to do this to my team. I want them to become A+ player ultimately after TransactionLink becomes a success. And I think the only way to do that is by just mingling, knowing people, hearing things, and drinking beer together, because you're not going to have a beer online.
Mateusz, hooray to your courage to speak up your mind, as I think more and more executives and founders, co-founders are beginning to realize that remote is not the way to go, especially with new people joining your company, where you don't have the opportunity to check them, to see them in action, in practice every day, and this growth and development. And more research papers are getting, seeing the light of day, basically, where CEOs and decision makers are more openly saying that office-based is probably more effective than definitely on remote, and in many respects also a hybrid. I am in the same camp myself. I don't believe that somebody who doesn't know the company, the way we work and operate, will be able to properly contribute to the company's success. If somebody has been with us for 5 years or so, and there's this, this language of shortcuts basically already created, yeah, of course. But then otherwise, it's
exactly. I don't want to take the narrative of, if you are doing remote, then you're lazy, you're bad, But because that's not the case. We're obviously not talking about people who are lying to us and to themselves. I'm talking about people who actively think about what's their next career step, because I do realize that TransactionLink is not the place. This is not Deutsche Bank. They're not going to be stuck with me for 40 years. They're going to come here. I want to catapult their careers into another level, and they will move on to be head of product Stripe. That's I would love that. Okay. But in order to do this, they need to be around. They need to listen. They need to observe. They need to, catch everything on the fly, not by writing it. If I send them a memo that skips half of the details. Right?
Oh yes, of course. So it's easier to give when you're face to face, and it's easier to take as well.
Yes,
so it's
exactly.
A two-way road, basically.
Very simple. If I was working at 26 and I was remote, I probably wouldn't know half of the things I know from N26, because it was, like I said, what I took from N26 was the culture, that we have these lunches, that, how do you arrange your office to fit it? How are people, where are they sitting? How do they communicate with each other? And if I wasn't remote, I would never know that, right? Maybe I would have the same kind of FinTech experience, maybe, or maybe not, because majority of the FinTech experience comes from talking to this great, brilliant data guy, and you say, hey, what do you do with the data you get from in the bank, right? And he just tells you. Or imagine by saying, can I have a call with you when we discuss what N26 is doing? This doesn't happen, right?
Or imagine Rocket Internet would be cloning businesses remotely to Bangladesh, to Thailand, to Africa, and all the other markets, right? Rather than sending somebody there on the ground. Mateusz, thanks. That was interesting, quick round. Let's move on to the final round. Round 5, Formula F3, or funding for the future. Before we discuss the future, let's see where you stand right now with the history of funding. So pre-seed round closed in June 2021. I have to mention your investors. So there's a bunch of angels as well, including people from N26, by the way, right? Lucas, Timo, Nicolas, I understand. But also funds are interesting. Target Global, Entree Capital, Tiny VC, and companies they have financed by now are impressive. And to see you among them probably is a very strong signal as well. Target have invested in what Revolut, Lyft, and so on, Untrained, like Gusto, Stripe, Deliveroo, Snapchat, Monday CRM, Tiny VC with FIMA. We had a podcast on them, by the way, and some other guys. I mean, that's impressive. How did you manage to convince them to work with you?
I think I'm not going to lie that, you know, these are not the only funds we obviously talked to, but these were the best funds for us and still are. I think it's mostly about vision. So I think these funds are mature enough to know that what you pitch to them initially might not necessarily be what you end up doing. Obviously, like if you pitch, you know, a mobility and you end up doing like selling potatoes, that's probably not something they will be happy with. But as long as you're still in the investment thesis, they know that they're investing in the person and in this person's conviction, in this person's direction of thinking, especially at pre-seed. And, you know, it's very refreshing to see that people who invested in those companies you mentioned said, hey, there's this Mateusz guy, there's this Marek guy. They have some idea, like they have a pretty good idea how to do this. It's very interesting. It's not there yet, but it's very interesting. Let's just bet on it. You know, it makes sense. And I think, again, what convinced them? I think you have to be convinced that this makes sense, right? You can't really be questioning yourself in a stupid way. So like you always have to be questioning whether you are doing the right way, but never question, oh my God, you know, lending is going to die or something like this. You know, they need, like, I think they really want to see that you're convinced, because conviction is the only thing that is going to drive you for the next X years, because things go really badly. So you need to be motivated. You need to be convinced. And also the model we're pursuing is something new. So, you know, we partner up with funds who are, they're not really risk averse, right? So they wouldn't invest in those your traditional factories or like power plants or something like this. They really want to win big. If this works the way we think it will, the return is going to be enormous on this, because we are combining, you know, a marketplace and a B2B setup with powerful network effects, capturing a lot of value for financial services, and like having an overlook on top of this without the overhead of building, you know, all the licensing, complicated, all complicated plumbing underneath that consumes a lot of money. This could be a very, very, very high return investment for them, but you need to be adventurous, let's call it this way. But if you portray it this way, that you're looking for an investor that is looking for something enormous, not a good business, but an enormous business potentially, then you end up with the best investors. And this is what happened to us, right? Like, ironically, much worse funds would say no to us, even though, you know, now they're getting back to us saying, oh, actually, yeah, now the target has invested, and, you know, this bit of the business has been de-risked. Let's talk. But you know, Target and Trade, these guys were like, they basically saw a bunch of slides and very early POCs, and they were like, yes, there could be something to it. So it's I don't think there's a magic formula, is what I'm trying to say. It's more like you need to love it. You need to have conviction. You need to be in the right market as well, right? But as long as it makes sense, and you know how to make this defensible, how to capture value, and you know what's the long-term upside of this business, then a sensible investor is always going to invest in your idea.
Yeah, and so with these investors on your cap table, all of a sudden you have proven your investability for like VCs from other leagues, let's say, not as high league as those ones. Okay, but technically, tell me, how did you get into, like, how did you establish relations with Target on Trade Tiny? Like, you getting out to them, or you would go for a warm intro from somebody in the portfolio?
So I actually got introduced to Target through one of my very good friend, Lucas, who is also an angel in TransactionLink. Basically, I can't remember what the story is for how he got to know them, but it was also pretty spontaneous. It's not that he's good friends with them.
Anyway, you don't care. I mean, you don't care. There's a warm intro. That's all you need. And you know what I mean? Like, the etymology of the warm intro is not like important, almost not important. Anyways, there's a chain reaction, you could say, right? So you got the right angels who got the right connections, who got you the right intro.
Well, that was the kind of initial tipping point, but then, you know, Entree and Tiny basically joined later when they saw, I mean, I probably don't have to explain it to you that, you know, funds talk to each other. They, even though they, in theory they compete, they really like to talk to each other. Like, what do you think about this idea? Do you think it's interesting? Da, da, da. And, you know, after like, there was zero reach out from myself. So like, I would never write to, I don't know, like pitch@targetglobal.com or something like that. They always find you. If you're interesting and if the space is talking about you, they always find you, because, you know, investors are not stupid. They are looking to allocate, like to invest their money somewhere. And if there's an interesting opportunity, they will proactively reach out to you. And that's happening. I'm not saying they invest, because they always, obviously they do their DD, analysis. They need to see how this fits in their portfolio. Sometimes they do just scouting, because to know, you know, they have a competitor or growing somewhere in stealth and they want to know what you're doing. That's also the case.
Of course.
But in my experience personally, I have not ever written an email to a VC. And again, I don't think this is a very rare situation. It's not like we're special. It's just that VCs are actively looking for good ideas. And even if they don't invest, they want to know what you're up to, and they want to know where the space is, which direction the space is going to.
Yeah. And again, what I want to say is the right choice of angels is often basically the springboard for the right, access to the right VCs. Interesting.
Yes.
And that's your case, as a matter of fact. The right angels brought you the right VC, first VC, and then they speak at the back end, and everybody looks for synergies, I would say, or optimization of their scouting process. And so if Entree are happy with them, then probably there's something we don't waste time on DD and all this stuff, and at least make our decisions a little bit quicker, you know, win time, and then otherwise. Interesting. What about the next funding milestone? Do you have this in plan already, and what this is going to be?
I mean, we don't know yet. I mean, let's see how the business pans out. I mean, we have a pretty solid idea where we're going, but we need to prove it. Again, you know, coming back to what I learned at Rocket. We really need to, you know, have loads of POCs, customers that pay. Obviously, we're not talking about making millions. We're talking about customers who say, "Oh my God, I love this solution to the extent I'm going to recommend it to my, you know, friend, competitor, or whatever, whoever." And this is the moment where we're going to get our seed round. I don't know what the round will be just yet, because we're still fine, obviously, with the money we've got from our previous round. Let's see, nothing set in stone. We are not looking for money actively, so let's see.
It's early, but it's never too early to think of the exit scenario. Do you have any?
No, I don't want to think about it. I mean, I have no idea what this could be. I don't know if it's, you know, an IPO, an exit to a banking as a service player, maybe to a bank, but I don't think it's going to be the bank. I don't know. I don't really think about it, because like, it's, you know, it's like it's like thinking about what wedding ring you're going to buy to your girlfriend, like, but like you just met, right? You don't know what's going to happen. Like, is it going to be a match? Is it going to be exitable? Is anyone going to put a price on it? Is the market not going to turn, and all the, you know, whatever companies that could buy us will not have a different idea for their investment? No idea. Maybe MasterCard will go bankrupt, or maybe not. You know, I don't know. It's very far. Like, we are talking about an exit in like 5 years earliest, right? So, and in the past 5 years, a lot has changed in FinTech, and it's only changing faster. So it's really, there's no point thinking about it. Like, what I'm focusing on is how can I add more value to my customers.
And with this, Mateusz, we will need to wrap up this great chat. I wish you to reach this moment where you would need to choose one exit scenario or the other. And in the meantime, you definitely have a whole adventure to develop the App Store, the relations with the app providers, with the clients, investors at future stages. And wish you all the best, Mateusz. Thanks. That was a great chat.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you for having me.